You're listening to Her Brilliant Health Radio, episode number 6.
She used to deliver babies, but now she delivers exceptional wellness for women. Welcome to Her Brilliant Health Radio, where holistic women's health expert and board-certified OBGYN Dr. Kyrin Dunstan shares revolutionary insight from leading experts on what you need to know today to treat the root cause of disease, heal, and create the radiant health you've been searching for.
Hey, it's Dr. Kyrin, and welcome to another episode of Her Brilliant Health. Today, please help me welcome my special guest, Dr. Marisol Teijeiro. She's a naturopathic doctor, and she's a world leader, renowned for her passion for cleansing and gut health. Not only because she has the degree on the wall, but more so because she's experienced feeling shitty and figured out the hierarchy on how to get healthy. Crowned the Queen of Thrones for over 15 years, she has trained and educated healthcare practitioners and has helped thousands of patients transition from shit show to owning their throne. Dr. Marisol directs and practices at Sanus Health Practice in Canada. She's spearheaded Pura Sanus health supplements and invented the Queen of Thrones organic castor oil pack. The launch of her first book, Oh Shit, her educational conferences and programs heralds her championing you to become your legend. Join her movement and help her to achieve her goal of being in 1 billion bathrooms by 2020. We can do it. Welcome, Dr. Marisol. So glad to have you on the show. So happy to have you here. And who do you have with you?
So I have my little princess Lola. She's a Yorkshire Terrier, and she's my little love and pride and joy, my little baby who hangs out with me in clinic all the time.
I love it. And this is Carly. She's one of my fox terriers. Carly has a little mess in her eye there. I said I need to take it out. But anyway, so we both have dogs. You know, it's so funny. Before we were getting on the show, I was thinking, I would love to do, because I love dogs. Oh. I would love to do a show like Doctors with Dogs at the Beach or something.
That would be perfect. I mean, the thing is like, I don't know about you, but a lot of my platform about poop happened because I was watching Lola and her natural pooping habits, right? Because dogs teach us so much, right? Don't you find? You learn from them all the time.
Because you watch, it's so funny. You do watch them poop all the time, and you can really monitor where your dog is with their health by their poop. Is it dry? Is it moist? What color is it? And yesterday I came home and my daughter said, Otis, my other fox terrier, had bloody diarrhea. So then immediately, what's going on? So tell me about your journey and how that started.
Yeah. So for me, it was that I lived my entire life dealing with IBS. Unlike everybody else, right? Because IBS is one of those syndromes that pretty much everybody has a problem with their gut. And for me, it started when I was younger, and it was more constipation. My mother dealt with it as well too. So it was normal, right? It was like, oh, we're not going to the bathroom. That's fine. It's not a big deal. It can't be our food. My mother wasn't that educated about it, right? Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until later on in my life, I started getting a lot more anxious and having a lot more stress, just a lot more demands. Of course, as all of us, career, working towards becoming a naturopathic doctor. And then I started going towards the other end where it was, constant diarrhea. Whenever I get stressed, I'd have diarrhea. And the problem with that was that it impacted my life so greatly. I mean, I had a spare pair of underwear in my car all the time and a pair of pants, because everywhere I would go, there was the possibility that I would have like a gripping moment of fear where, I didn't know what was coming out of my body, if it was going to come out right away. So I had to learn how to live with my poop and understand what my poop was telling me. And I realized, it was telling me that things were off balance, right? That I was stressed out to the max and I needed to do things to get my health back on track. So from there, I started, observing Lola's poops and stools, and I saw, wow, she eats and then she goes to the bathroom. That's the normal. Her stools are solid. They're not liquid. They're well formed. So she really was majorly impactful in my journey, because I realized that, like the saying, all that dogs do is eat, sleep, poop. I mean, we're human beings like that too, and we should be doing, I have a couple more: eat, sleep, pray, eat well, drink well, poop. Because it's a little bit more for us to do, but they can serve as a great example. And from there, I started realizing that one of my gifts in practice was always educating patients about their pooping habits and what was going on with their poop and their stools. And my focus shifted completely to working on the gut, and that's how I became the Queen of Thrones, a name given to me by my patients, because all I like to do is talk about poop. Right?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you really put that at the forefront, because I think a lot of people are raised that they're ashamed to talk about poop. They think there's something wrong with talking about it. There's something wrong with doing it. And hence that psychological block around proper pooping.
Yeah.
The suppression of the poop reflex, that colonic reflex that everybody has, that you eat and you're supposed to poop. When I tell patients that, they're like, what? Like, I haven't had that since I was a kid in diapers. And, I love that you've really put that at the forefront, because most of us who do this type of work, that even though I'm an MD, I practice naturopathic medicine essentially, because it really is the way to get the body healthy. And then I have that access to drugs if needed, but we try the natural first. I love that you put that at the forefront. A lot of us come to it kind of in a roundabout way. Right. It's so funny. When I was growing up, my best girlfriend and I in high school, Susan, we used to have what her brother referred to as these scatological conversations.
Oh boy.
We were like, scatological, but we were always talking about our poop and our periods and what was going on with our bodily functions. So I love that. And dogs are so right there out there with it.
Yeah.
So you really brought it to the forefront. And I love that you have a gift that you're going to actually help people. They will tell you about it at the end, that they can download and know kind of what's going on with their health based on their poop, just like you know about your dog.
Everything.
Yes. So talk to me about, we talked a little bit about how you got to be the Queen of Thrones, which I love, by the way.
Thanks.
And how do you approach somebody when you first see them and you want to educate them about their poop? What do you tell them, and what do you get them to look at and do?
Yeah, so I often, I start really simply, and I just started investigating, usually with this whether I'm giving a seminar or a conference or speaking to a patient. I often ask them these couple of questions. I go, are you a hyper wiper? Right? That's number one question I ask. Yeah, I know. First of all, it's hilarious and everyone starts laughing. So I love that because I figure, if I can get them laughing as we go deeper and deeper into the dung, the delivery of the dung, we'll be in good shape. So I asked them, are you a hyper wiper? And because this is a really classic sign. If you take your dog again, when Lola goes out for a number 2, she just goes to the bathroom. I don't wipe her bum afterwards. So it's the same thing with humans. Really, we should wipe, and we should wipe clean. But the thing is, as many of us are wiping multiple times, using half of the roll of toilet paper. And that's because our stools is very sticky. And that's a sign of mucus, likely food sensitivities, or maybe a bad microbiome, right? So right away, you can start to deduce some things with your stools. Another big favorite that I tell patients is that they have to be going to the bathroom all the way from the wrist to the elbow. So that's a normal daily bowel movement. And if you were to coordinate that onto your body, that actually is the size of your lower descending colon. So I always tell patients that those are the 2 first things I start with. Because I figure is that as long as you get that in your mind that, you shouldn't be hyper wiping, and you should in a daytime pass that amount of stools, you're really set off to a good start. And the key to this is that I don't look at the stools or digestion as just, a process in the body. To me, it's actually much more divine than that. And how I feel is that our guts are our center So when we're talking, I'm telling patients about, going to the bathroom properly. Of course, I talk about hyper wiping and, the length that they have to be achieving in a day. But then I go off and I tell them a little bit about why digestion is so important. It's not only about absorbing our food, our nutrients and elimination, but our digestion is how we are digesting our lives. So if we're not having a good time emotionally, our digestion is going to be completely off, right? So it's so much more than just breaking down of food. It is extended to like far levels of us being connected to ourselves, being connected to our grace. Our gut is right midway in between of all of our chakras and all of our energy centers, right? And if it is closed off, shut down, if we're unable to actually give our good colonic reflex a go after we eat, we need to address that. Like, why are we so disconnected to ourselves, right? And that's one of the big reasons too why some of my books and one of the things that I have out there, gut feelings, getting people in touch with their feelings, butterflies in the belly, guts of steel. Like, look at all the sayings that we have in our world about digestion and about, the feelings that we feel or suppressing our feelings, right? I've got guts of steel. That's a person who's got guts that have been disconnected, right? I feel that pooping properly is our number one superpower, all of us. And it's a superpower. Yeah, seriously. And it's a superpower that we all have, right? It's like you doctor have different superpowers than I have, but we all of us share the pooping superpower. And when our pooping superpower is connected, we are rock stars, right? That's how I look at it. It is our number one shared superpower across humanity. Right.
I love that. I love that you are honest and tell it like it is. And, if somebody asks you, what's your superpower? Pooping. I would say that my superpower is being able to break down complicated medical issues.
Love it.
To down to earth, understandable language. And that's why one of the reasons why I love you is because you do that for poop and you bring it right to the front, and it is so important. And I just want to back up to something that you said, and I love having these just organic conversations that flow without an agenda, except to impart for people what we know to be true about creating brilliant health.
Yeah.
On an everyday basis. This is something that I'm thinking about. What's going on with my poop? What's going on with my patient's poop? Where are we with that? And so most people don't live that way. So everybody listening, listen up, because you need to be worrying about your superpower, your pooping power.
Yeah.
What occurred to me, I went to a workshop last week that was about a lot of different things. But one of the things that it was about boundaries, appropriate physical, sexual, emotional, and spiritual boundaries between you and other people, and what's appropriate external and internal boundaries. And I had this aha realization that I got to share with someone, and you're like the perfect person. I had this realization because I have too struggled with irritable bowel my whole life. And then leaky gut, which is another good conversation we can have. And I had this realization that leaky gut is literally, what is it? It's a leak between the boundaries between you and your external environment. Now, most people are going to think, well, your gut's inside you, it's not external. Yeah. But actually, that's something that I help patients to realize, is that your gut is actually your biggest interface with the external environment, not your skin that's on your outside. Everybody thinks that's it. But you put your environment into your digestive system. And if you break out the surface area of your gastrointestinal tract, it's way more than your skin. It pales in comparison. I think your gut is like 2 doubles tennis courts if you lay it out.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a boundary violation. Leaky gut is a boundary violation. And I had this realization that if I have poor boundaries with people, whether physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, in my life, I'm going to have leaky gut.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. And it goes, I mean, Dr. Kyrin, there's like the research that supports this too, right? Because when you have those boundary violations, right, what happens? Your body is stressed. You're in the sympathetic dominance. Your, cortisol, your stress hormones, the one that makes us all have that belly fat is floating through your system. And there's really good evidence that shows, it's all laboratory work done on animals, but it demonstrates that when there is those high levels of cortisol and that stress within the system, there is a leaky gut membrane. Right. And, you speak the truth, woman. Like I'm like, amen to that. Like, this is the reality, is that, our gut and our skin and the nervous system all come from the same embryonic tissue. All from the same embryonic tissue. So which means that they are identical. So it's our gut is our inside, our outside on our inside, right? So we are bringing everything in. We're a basic tube on the inside, tube on the outside, right? And the interface of the cells all within the middle of us. So these tubes feel, our skin feels, our skin senses, and our gut feels and our gut senses, just like our mind and our eyes, all these neurological tissues, the skin, the gut, they're all the same, right? And then the gut just has this extra dimension where it's got its own nervous system, the enteric nervous system, which takes it that much further, right? Where it can actually sense things like pressure and, so you're not only taking like a sympathetic stress state of, boundary violation, but then on top of it, you've got pressure in the system from food being eaten in the stress state. And then that sets you up for leaky gut for sure. And irritable bowel and all the gamut of gut problems, right? Which, they say it's about 30% of the US population that suffers from an irritable bowel. But honestly, that's only the people who've gone to their doctors. How many years was I living? And I'm sure yourself as well too. This occurs a lot in high professional performance geared professions, right? Like us doctors, we want to be our best. We're always working really hard. But we were the last people who are going to go to a doctor. We think we got it under control, or we just like shove it under the carpet, right? Until it becomes a big problem. So how many people, I would say in my practice, 95% of people come in and half of them don't even talk about their gut problems. They think it's just like, sideline issue, right? You?
Yes, same thing. And I just want to back up and help people understand, because I find that there are a lot of things we take for granted because we understand them so clearly, but some people are listening and thinking, what are they talking about? Violation is causing my leaky gut. Like what? So I just want to back up and say that explain that to people a little bit. So when you don't have good boundaries between yourself and other people, and people are encroaching on your boundaries or you're encroaching on others, that's not a natural state.
Right.
And your emotions will react to that as feeling defensive or resentful or whatever feelings, negative feelings you have around that. And scientists have proven that thoughts are things and emotions are things, and they affect your health through your stress hormone system, which is cortisol, which is made by your adrenal glands that sit on the back, in your back inside on top of your kidneys. So your stress hormone, cortisol, your fight, flight, but it's also your fight, flight, freeze, and fawn hormone, will be activated when you don't exhibit good boundaries with other people. When your cortisol goes up, then that affects your immune system function, and it affects your gastrointestinal function. And one of the things that it does is it alters the permeability of the lining to the gut. It alters the normal microbiome of your gastrointestinal tract, which we'll probably get into in a little bit, but that means your good bacteria that keep you healthy start dying and bad bacteria start growing. And then you become sensitive to foods you normally wouldn't be sensitive to, like almonds and broccoli. And you've got these really tiny microscopic leaks across your gastrointestinal lining that contribute to autoimmune disease and immune system dysfunction that allows cancer to form. And it really is they call it King Cortisol. It's the king of your health. So this is how you relate in the world and what you think and feel on a daily basis absolutely impacts your health. So when you go to the doctor and you're just getting a pill, what do they give you for irritable bowel? What Bentyl to slow your gut down? Right. That's not fixing anything. It's just masking the symptoms. So you have got to, and this is a huge part of what I work with people on, is that mental, emotional, spiritual balance. You have got to address that. And the gut and the adrenals and the cortisol are really where all these things are just, married in. Am I preaching the truth, Dr. Marisol? Right?
100%, Dr. Kyrin. I mean, in my first book, Oh Shit, which is set to launch end of 2018, beginning of 2019, my 3-step formula is number 1, connect, which is like get your circadian rhythms, your day-night pattern working well. Then it's clear out all the toxins, and then it's calm. Right? You have to work on the mind body, because if you don't, you will forever be dealing with IBS. You'll forever be dealing with pooping problems, because those 3 things, connect, clear, calm, that gives us clarity. Right. And, I love to say this, cleanliness is next to godliness. And it's true. When your gut is eliminating and cleaning well, you are connected and happy and whole. And, like you know where you're supposed to be in life. But when you're bloated and gassy or going to the bathroom too much or can't go, like you feel loaded, you feel foggy, you just feel off, right? So that's the thing, is that these are the things that help us to reconnect and to reset our bodies. And there's evidence too that, the microbiome resets itself with mind work, with yoga, with, it's amazing. We're not just only food-based, supplement-based. There's so much we can do to fix our bodies and our health and live that amazing life, that brilliant life. I love how you say that. Life really is brilliant, and we just got to find the tricks to make it brilliant, right?
Right. I mean, it should be. And if you're not living, brilliant health life, then something's wrong. And the answer is not going to be in a pill. If you're not getting prescribed meditation and that, what did you say? Connect,
clear, calm. And then that brings us clarity.
Clarity. And I say clarity is next to godliness, it's just, that's the aspiration. And when you are in that clarity, you're aligned with your highest self, your body naturally will heal. Yeah. But if you're not in that clear space, you have resistance and negative emotion in your body. That's blocking all your cells. So we touched on the microbiome. I would love to get into that more specifically. So can you talk about what is that biofilm? Because people hear about this and then they don't know. What is it and what do I need to do about it?
Absolutely. So many of us, we hear now, take yogurt, that'll help you to improve your microbiome and the biofilm that's in your gut. So the problem is that we have good gut bugs and bad gut bugs. And the problem is that most of the time, if we're not eating, really clean and we're trying to avoid, genetically modified organisms and different foods like that, what ends up happening is that our gut microbiome easily within a 24-hour period can get switched over to a bad and unhealthy microbiome. So the bugs in your gut aren't good. And these bugs can be yeast, they can be parasites, they can be bacteria. Some of us understand the names like E. coli or Clostridium, C. difficile, the infections that really put people out in the hospital. But what ends up happening is that as these negative bad bugs accumulate in our guts, as well as the yeast and the parasites, they end up creating almost like a protective barrier for themselves called a biofilm. You find the biofilm the hardest to work with and to remove in the most virulent of bacterias, like Lyme's disease, an example, right? Many people who are suffering with Lyme's disease, they're very familiar with the term biofilm. In a less, a horrible condition, I guess you could say, you don't find the biofilm conversation such a big deal, but it still exists, and that's a problem. People are constantly taking, probiotics, good bacteria as much as possible, but they're doing nothing to disrupt that biofilm. And truly, the only substances that actually break down the biofilm are antibiotics, which we try not to give that too often, because the problem is if you do prescribe antibiotics, then what ends up happening is that you can get overgrowth of more yeast, more bad bacteria if you're not careful about how you're resetting the gut, right? And I'm sure you probably experience this in practice. So the big key is, what are the natural biofilm breakdowns? So one of my favorite tools in practice is castor oil. And castor oil recently has been shown actually in periodontal disease to help break down the biofilm. And as you know, our mouth is the biggest source of bacteria that we have, right? It's one of the reasons why they say don't kiss your dog. I don't listen to that one. Because we have such different spectrums of bacteria, and it's basically a cesspool because we bring everything into our mouth and we don't have anything like stomach acid to like kill off that bacteria, so everything thrives. So what they did is they actually used in test trays castor oil in comparison to Polydent, other chlorhexidine, really strong antimicrobials. And they found in vitro that the chemical ones worked better, but in vivo, that castor oil worked better, which is great. So what we do with patients, we take castor oil, always in a glass bottle, and we do like a oil pulling. Are you familiar with oil pulling?
Mm-hmm.
So to start breaking down and changing the microbiome in the mouth, because it's not only about the mucous membrane that's in our guts, but it begins in the mouth and then it goes down the digestive tract into the bottom, right? So we have to deal with everything. So we start our patients on doing oil pulling with castor oil, which most people are familiar using sesame seed oil and coconut oil, but you usually have to do 2 tablespoons and you have to do it for 20 minutes. With castor oil, you do 1 teaspoon and you do it for 2 minutes. It's that much stronger. And it's incredible too. People are having dental work. It helps soothe the mouth. So we have that as a practice. And then on the gut, topically, we actually have people do the old castor oil pack. I don't know if you're familiar with it or if you've done them.
I love them. I prescribe them, and I love that you're giving practical information. So can you want to talk about how people can make a castor oil pack and use it?
Sure. So I've actually made it really easy where I've actually created a castor oil pack for people to actually be able to do it really simply without having to make like a fuss about it. Because I always found in my practice, the biggest issue was that if patients had a barrier or they couldn't find a flannel or blah, 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 there's so many steps in the castor oil pack that they would never do it, right? Because the old way of doing it was to take layers of cotton flannel, slathering it with castor oil, putting it in the oven, warming it up, and then putting it on your body, laying down, wrapping your body with saran wrap, which I didn't like because it's plastic, right? Yeah. And oil, and then laying there for an hour and you were immobile. I mean, that was what I had been recommended and prescribed a castor oil pack since the beginning of my IBS way back when. And I never did it because it was so hard to do, right? I was like, forget about it. I don't have the time. I'm too busy. Not going to try that. It wasn't until, I was really sick and had to take a semester off of school where I finally was like, you know what, there's something to this castor oil pack. I got to do it. So then I invented my first go of the castor oil pack. And this is the evolution of it. And it's called the Queen of Thrones packs. How fitting. And it comes in its own little very convenient pack. And it's basically impermeable barrier material. So it's shaped in a figure 8 for the infinity sign, curvy, just like women's bodies. And you basically, all you do is just pour 2 to 4 tablespoons of castor oil on it, and you place it on your liver, which is right underneath of your right rib cage, and you tie it to your body. So now you can do your castor oil pack, you can walk around, you can make dinner. Some of my patients who have really bad digestion and they see the undigested food particles in their stools. Yeah. Another big question I ask, I always have them do a castor oil pack with their dinner so that at least that meal, their body switches into the relaxed state and then they can really digest and absorb and get all the nourishment from that meal. Because a big problem and a big thing is this. You know how you were talking about boundaries and I was talking about how the body creates stress from the boundaries being broken. The thing is that the body doesn't know whether it's an emotional stressor, right, of an emotional boundary being crossed, or if it's a bad bacteria which is causing a stress, or if it's a chemical that's causing a stress. To the body, it's all stress. And that's why they say stress is the cause of all disease. So the biggest claim to fame of the castor oil pack is that the minute that you put it on your body, what that does is that relaxes your nervous system. And when you relax your nervous system, you open up the gates to heal, no matter what the condition is. And you open up the gates to go to the bathroom well. You open up the gates to get all your detoxification functions working well. And, at this point, castor oil, the research is starting to really pick up. And we found that castor oil improves the glutathione levels in the body, which you and me know it's hard to get that glutathione high in the body without using incredibly expensive supplements. Castor oil will break down the biofilm in the system. It's a strong anti-inflammatory. And then these packs are uber relaxing. So they put you into the state where you actually will heal. How amazing, right? We're blessed. And these aren't, some new fad that got started. These are so traditional. I mean, they date back to Egyptian times, to Hippocrates, the father of medicine. The ancient Chinese medicine practice used it for packs on top of joints. I mean, the list goes on and on. Ayurvedic, Indian medical practitioners, they would use the packs for digestive concerns all over the place, so this is legendary, this treatment. And my goal is, I feel I've been put on this earth to really make sure that this practice doesn't get lost, because it has so many benefits for people if they are dealing with any digestive concern. And that is pretty much everybody, because every condition, basically you can correlate it back down to something going on with the microbiome and something awry with the gut.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for creating that pack. I love it.
It's so easy.
It's so easy, because then I've made plenty of castor oil pack, and I'm going to get your packs for myself, and I'm going to recommend them to my patients.
Awesome. Yeah.
So you covered so much in there, but I guess what it all boils down to, your mother was right. So about the castor oil, right?
Yeah, right?
That was a thing. That used to be a thing with moms giving kids castor oil. But
I love it.
Fallen out of favor. But there's a reason that these home treatments and home remedies are passed down from generation to generation to generation.
Yeah.
Because they work.
They work. Yeah. And the thing too is that I look at it like this. Castor oil, the bean, the castor plant is known as the palm of Christ, right? And if you look back to biblical references, Jesus used castor oil to anoint the sick, right? It's an anointing oil, so it's a healing oil. And on top of it, when kings and queens, this is very fitting for the Queen of Thrones, when kings and queens took their throne, they actually anointed them in castor oil. Right? And so I always say, own your throne, right? With castor oil, with these different, lifestyle practices. Like, to me, these are part of, royal health practices. It's like sleeping, breathing, eating well, drinking well, not alcohol sometimes, but the good stuff, water, right? The right type of water. And, taking the right types of supplements, having a good mindset, working on being positive, all those things make up our health practice. And, the old things are all there. They all work, like, you can't deny something that has been working for eons and that has, biblical reference and, reference back into the early days of medicine. You can't make that up, right? Even though there might not be a bazillion studies, but it's because no one makes profit on castor oil, right? It's a relatively inexpensive treatment. But I mean, I've seen patients at the brink of, death, where nothing was moving in their bowels, and doing a castor oil pack was the only thing to help them, have good movement and have flow and relax. And so I across the board in my practice, every single patient gets a castor oil pack. It's that, along with probiotics, is one of our number one first prescriptions. Boom. And because you can do a lot of work just with that.
Right. And there's so much benefit to it. I oftentimes recommend castor oil packs always for people with adrenal fatigue. You can put it right on your adrenals. It works for the liver. It works for inflammation in joints. You can put it over joints. Yeah. It works for so many things. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're welcome. Yeah.
And what do you think is most important? So next to the castor oil packs and the probiotics and monitoring your feelings and doing the mindfulness and meditation and calming your nervous system, what are some other techniques and tools that you use with your patients to help them heal their gut?
So quality of food is very important. Although we think, I don't need to eat organic, I don't need to do this, but truly these days, honestly, organic is the way to go, because even organic isn't 100% clean, right? Because there is, a bit of chemical residue and transfer that can occur in the bins. I mean, you can get into nitty gritty. It's not even perfect, but there's a lot less of chemicals. And typically organic food is also not genetically modified. And that makes a huge impact, because we've evolved since Paleolithic time to be dealing with certain types of foods. And now our food is being genetically changed. So our gut really is even more scared when that food gets into our bodies. And there's even say that the different pesticides that are used actually end up killing off the good bacteria within our guts too. So then how on earth are we able to create a healthy microbiome? So with food, and this is actually what I talk about in my gut feeling ebook that we're going to give to people and connect them with, is that I love Paleolithic diets. Just simple. I want it to be simple. I don't want it to be completely like you can never ever have grains, but I think the majority of time it's really important to eat a lot of green vegetables, right? Hearty on the vegetables, and then lots of healthy fats, and then a good portion of meats, that are heart healthy meats. Heart healthy meats to me are fowl, wild game, a little bit of red beef. I actually don't find red meat as bad as long as it's well sourced. I actually would prefer people to stay away from pork, because pork is too close to human tissue, and in the gut that can actually create a bit of an immunological response. Mm-hmm. Where there's a bit of a war. Pork takes 7 to 8 hours to digest, whereas fish will take 1 to 2, fowl will take 2 to 3, beef 5 to 6, and then 7 to 8 hours for pork. So obviously something's going on, and that's why when you eat pork, it feels heavy. And if you look along the different cultures, so many cultures don't eat pork at all, right? They really decided that it's not a good healthy food, and there's a reason. Too close to human tissues.
Always a reason.
Yeah, there's always a reason, right? Like we need to look back to our history, because our history really does give us a lot of clues. One of my things this year is that I'm reading the Bible. I'm born Catholic. Now I would say I believe everything. So I welcome Christianity, Buddhism, all of it. But I'm eventually going to be reading all of the great texts, the religious texts of all the cultures, but I'm starting with the Bible, because within there lies a lot of beautiful information about how things were done. And, we might not be able to eat wheat as it was discussed in the Bible, because, it's a different world these days, but there's a lot of knowledge in these books and textbooks that has been passed down. And it's that information that really is foundational to our healing and our health, which is incredible. And, like eating lots of vegetables, eating good oils, olive oils in the Bible, these things we can do them. They're not hard. They've been done for years. So why don't we just start with those things, right? So that would be my say, is to, eat good health, lots of vegetables. Try to eat minimal grains if you can, and then a little bit of good healthy meats and lots of good healthy fats. And fats also will make you beautiful. So why wouldn't you want to eat a lot of fats?
Make your skin moist and supple, your hair and your nails. And so, boy, that's something else that we have in common that I could have a whole conversation with you about. I'm right with you on really all religions say the same thing when you boil them down to their essence. And there's so much to be gained from that. And I do try to help people find that commonality, because when they don't have it, they have more division between them and other people. So you talk about boundaries. Then they have walls between themselves and other people. And imagine what the metaphysical effect is on the gut when you've got walls between yourself and other people. And then you create this wall in your gut. Yeah. So helping people really, okay, religion, whatever you want to believe, that just means to bind to, and it's really a way of, my dogs want to put in their 2 cents, really a way of living and rules to live by, and that's fine. But when you distill it down to the essence, to the spirituality of who you are, and all religions say the same thing, really medicine and spirituality intersect.
Oh, yes.
And science has proven that connection, that there is a connection. And so I talk with people, and I love that you mentioned chakras. I teach them about your energy body that radiates several feet from outside of you, and how it's really the framework and scaffolding for your physical body. And your physical body is really just a reflection of what your energetic body is manifesting, and how you have to, you need to work with that to heal it. Because if you have an energetic crimp, where really all disease comes from, then you can do all the physical things you want, whether it's probiotics, castor oil packs, you'll never get where you want to be. So that's one of my favorite topics. I did want to touch on something else that you mentioned. So you're talking about the quality of food. So people get so confused about food sensitivities and allergies these days. So let's talk a little bit about that and see if we can give them some clarity around why now do people have so many food sensitivities? What's the difference between a food sensitivity and an allergy? How do I know if I have them? I tried not eating gluten. I didn't feel any better. Does that mean gluten?
Oh, yeah.
That comes. So let's talk about that and see if we can shed some light.
Yeah, so it's really simple. Like in my eyes, I've always found this. It's like a food allergy is a proper food allergy, like a peanut allergy. You know, kids can't take peanuts to school. What happens? They get, you know, throat closed. They get hives all over their body. So that's a true allergen, a true allergy where, you know, it's like it can be deadly. So you really don't want to be messing with that. So that's a proper food allergy. A sensitivity is something that we will eat or will get exposed to. And what happens is that the problem is within the dose. If we have had too much of a dose for many people, that food sensitivity will become an irritant to them. Now, not all foods that you have too much of will become an irritant. And this is the reason why, to me, it's so important to test your food sensitivities with the IgG, because that immunoglobulin, because that, what that'll do is that'll show you both your exposure sensitivities and your true sensitivities. So once you take away those foods, that, say for an example, I'll give you my example. So I was sensitive to broccoli, dairy, rice. It was horrible. Almonds. And I had actually gone to 5 naturopathic doctors before finally one of them tested me. So every time I would do a cleanse, I would be, you know, my gut would be in trouble. I would be horrible. I thought I was going to die. I felt worse than anything. And this is before my becoming a naturopathic doctor. And then eventually I'm like, you know, there's got to be a way to test, because I mean, this is horrible. I'm trying all these things, spending a lot of money, nothing's working. I'm feeling worse. So I tested, and then I found these foods, right? And I'm Spanish. And, you know, back in the day, a cleansed diet included almonds, rice, broccoli, kale, you know, all my food sensitivities. So I was doomed right from the beginning. And it's why I got into so interested in detoxification medicine. So with taking away those foods for a period of a year, I realized that I actually wasn't sensitive to those foods. I was truly sensitive to dairy, because that stayed sensitive even with my avoiding it. But I wasn't truly sensitive to rice or broccoli or kale or almonds. I just was overexposing myself to them. And because of that, I created an issue. So that's a sensitivity. And if you have a lot of stress in your system and you constantly have this leaky gut, what ends up happening is you end up becoming stressed to a lot of different foods. And that's why it's important to really, you know, try to calm yourself down, do a castor oil pack before a dinner, before a big meal, you know, do something so that you're calm when you're eating, so that at least not all the foods are going out into the body. Then we have a food intolerance. And the food intolerance is basically that you're missing a digestive enzyme, whether it be, you know, lactose, to be able to break down, you know, lactose, the molecule in the dairy milk, right? So you're deficient in an enzyme to break down a certain food. And that usually is treatable, because you just need to make sure that you find the right enzyme that you're missing, and then you give that to the body. So those are the 3 that are super important: a true allergen, a true sensitivity, and then an intolerance. But we tend to deal a lot with sensitivities, because they tend to create a lot of inflammation and low-grade irritation to the body that will really upset a gut and really upset overall well-being, right? So that's the breakdown for you.
Yeah, and I think we can't talk about this enough, because there is so much confusion out there. And I never once heard a patient say, everything I need to know about my health I learned on the internet. It doesn't happen, because
no,
there's a lot of information, but there isn't the wisdom that you and I have that we can impart with patients when we work with them one-on-one or in groups or in a forum like this, where it's doctor to doctor, and this is the gospel, what we're telling you. Different ways you can find out if you have a sensitivity to a food. There are blood tests that can be done. They can check for IgG. Sometimes they'll add a complement, what's called a complement fixation with it, to increase the sensitivity and specificity, meaning the accuracy.
Right.
Or I also like the ALCAT test, which is a cell-mediated test that looks at the mast cells. Do they degranulate in response to a sensitivity? So different practitioners have different tests that they like to work with, but it can be tested for. And sometimes what I want everyone to understand is that they'll say, well, I stopped eating gluten for a month and I didn't feel any different. Well, that could be because you're not only sensitive to gluten.
That's right.
You're most likely sensitive to many foods. And if you're eating those other foods, you're still going to have symptoms, because the gluten sensitivity is what we call, it's masked. You can't tell that you have it until you get rid of all the foods you're sensitive to.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like dairy and wheat have become the big, black sheep of the food world, and soy too, right? It's like, oh, and nuts as well, right? Oh, they're the bad, but you have to test. It's the only way to know. You can do an elimination diet, but that becomes very frustrating and tedious. But if you test, I always say to patients, invest in yourself up front and really, do the right things right away. Or you like, look at me. I had gone to multiple naturopathic practitioners, multiple doctors, all highly skilled. I would recommend them in a heartbeat, but they didn't ask me if I wanted to test, and I would have more than happily had paid hundreds of dollars for that test rather than feel the way that I felt. And, so we just have to test. And I mean, that's us. Like, you test as much as I do. I'm certain.
Oh, absolutely. When I did a food sensitivity test, it changed my life.
Yeah.
Hands down, it was one of the most important tests I did because like you, I was severely sensitive to almonds, cauliflower, peaches, blueberries. I mean, things that I would have had no idea.
That's right.
Along with gluten, dairy.
Yeah.
So I eliminated all those things. My health just transformed. So I'm a firm believer in testing if possible.
Great. Yeah, agreed.
I do want to touch on SIBO because people hear a lot about that and there's a lot of confusion. So can you help people understand, well, what is SIBO? How would I know if I have it? Do I need to be tested for it? How do I test for it?
Sure. Yeah. So SIBO, the way that I look at SIBO in practice is that, to me, the gut microbiome is the gut microbiome is the gut microbiome, right? So they call it small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is like the acronym for SIBO. But to me, in reality is that you're going to treat all of it the same way. You're going to be doing castor oil packs. You're going to be doing colon hydrotherapy. You're going to reset the gut microbiome. In SIBO, the one thing is that they may recommend that you do a series of antibiotics. Now, this in my licensing state, we don't prescribe antibiotics, so we tend not to use it for our SIBO patients. But what we do is we just change the diet, and we do that for a long period of time, for over a year, to reset the gut. There's a hydrogen breath test that can be done for SIBO. There's also many different stool cultures that you can do and try to test out. But the way that I look at it is that the gut is sick, and the gut needs to reset its gut bugs, and it's as simple as that. And you know what? It's not overnight. This takes years. People expect a miracle within a couple of months. It will never happen. Unfortunately, or fortunately for us, it is something that requires time and dedication and diligence to reset your gut, because it really is the most important center of our body. And, it's like a temple. It's not made in a day. The Egyptian pyramids weren't made in a day. It takes time to build greatness. And the most important part that we can build great in our bodies is our guts, right? So that's going to take time, and it'll take a year of diligence on your diet, following your food sensitivities, doing practices that cleanse the gut, castor oil packs daily, if possible, would be the ideal. And, working on your stress, working on meditation, working on connecting yourself and your energy centers, right? So that your body and your health as well. So I try to not over focus on the diagnosis, just because I know people love labels, but to me, SIBO is no different than an irritable bowel syndrome patient, or, they might have symptoms that are different, but bottom line, it's all going down to that gut microbiome that is off, that we need to fix.
And I love that you said it's no different than irritable bowel, and it's no different than a Crohn's diagnosis,
right?
Or colitis diagnosis, right? Or gastritis diagnosis, or any of these other things. The gastrointestinal tract functions as a living organism as a whole.
Yeah.
Just like you're a living organism, you can't slam your finger with a hammer and then have it not affect your toe. So all of the same. And I like that. So I kind of like some labels because they do help people communicate more effectively about, and we're talking about the same thing.
Yes.
But most labels in mainstream medicine are really just symptom diagnoses. They don't really say what the cause is. And so what Dr. Marisol and I are talking about is getting to the root cause of it.
That's right.
And the one thing I did want to tell people about SIBO is that this is where you can kind of get in trouble when you look at Dr. Google and you treat yourself. Because if you decide, I've had antibiotics, I don't have enough good bacteria, all I need is some probiotics, and you just start loading up with probiotics, and more is better for a lot of us.
Yeah. Not true. Yeah.
You're loading up with probiotics. If you have SIBO, you already have too many, you're just making the problem worse. And I have seen people do that. And then we do the functional stool testing, and your scores are way up here. So this is why it's helpful to work with a licensed, trained practitioner who knows about these things, who's trained in naturopathic medicine or trained in functional medicine like I am. Yeah. So, and get a, methane hydrogen breath test so you can kind of see what's going on, or a functional stool test. So, oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours because this is my favorite kind of scatological conversation.
Scatological, you got it, girl. I love it.
With the queen of poop. But time is limited, and people can get a lot more information on your website, drmarisol.com. They can go there and download your gut feelings ebook, and we will put a link in the show notes to go there directly and download it. And you'll get the 3 secrets to transform your gut from I feel off to I feel good, your blueprint for gut health. And you'll also see the roots of the toots, loaded, and exploded, mind your gut. And I know you can't resist to go there and read about these things right now. Awesome. And also on her website, we'll put the link to the Legends of the Throne infographic about your poo, where you can grab your free analysis and see what your poo says about you. And I know you want to know that. I know you check, everybody listening and watching. Oh, you can't tell me that you don't look in the toilet after you go to the bathroom, right? It's human nature. That's what we do. But wouldn't it be nice to be educated and know what you're looking for? Well, Dr. Marisol, the Queen of Thrones, can show you that. So thank you so much. I have to ask you, because I ask all my guests this. The podcast is called Her Brilliant Health. How do you define Her Brilliant Health?
I define Her Brilliant Health with someone who honors and lives within their grace, and their guts feel good, and they are owning their throne in life. That's brilliant to me.
I love that. They are owning their throne in life. So everybody listening, go own your throne. Thank you, Dr. Marisol, so much for the work that you do in the world, for sharing yourself and your knowledge and your beautiful, wonderful, loving spirit with us. And many, many blessings. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You too, Dr. Kyrin. Anytime, we'll talk again.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Her Brilliant Health Radio. Hopefully you're inspired to take action on some new information you received today. A step towards the bountiful, blissful, beautiful vitality that you deserve. If you have health topics and questions you'd like addressed, please message me on my Facebook page or visit KyrinDunstonMD.com and let me know. I'd love to help. Remember to share this podcast on social media and send it to your friends and family who could benefit from it too. If you love the show, please go right now to iTunes, write a review, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you'll be the first to know when future episodes are available. Thank you again for joining me, and remember, achieving optimal health isn't magic, it's science.